We are back and we are live once again. How's it going? You are listening to Beyond Sight and Sound, metal detecting, treasure hunting radio. Radio for you, by hunters, for hunters, from hunters. Obviously, I am your host, Josh Kimmel, the guy who tries to sneak out and dig when he can. And who can forget the adventurous co-host, Dirt Bandit 33. How's it going, Kenny?
It's going good, Josh. It's going real good. Just got home a little while ago and cleaned up some bullets I dug with the Deus today. And just kind of kicking back, waiting for this show.
All right, so we know that you've been out digging today then, at least. We kind of jumped right in here tonight, folks, so we can get on to the show and kind of wrap everything up a little early, hopefully. Tonight is actually a double shot for listeners. After the Beyond Sight and Sound show, there will be an extended run of Detect America's TNL. Some sort of issue delayed their show last night, so they're going to air as soon as we wrap up tonight. Frank has got some nice prizes lined up too, the way it sounds, for those who follow the TNL show with Detect America. Also, another little bit of news for those who have read Metal Detecting Hidden Places or are interested in checking out Rob's book, because it is a good read. Rob did a good job with it. It's about research, whether you're into metal detecting, bottle hunting, whatever, just want to know the history about your own property, maybe. It could be interesting to check out. And you can purchase that over on Amazon. The price has changed to now 99 cents for that ebook. But better yet, there's more news. Say you're really unsure, or you'd rather not spend any money at all, because everybody's about free, right? Everybody likes to get a little something free. Well, now you can go to his website, metaldetectingplaces.com, and view the book in its entirety, to the best of my knowledge, for free. All it's costing you now is a little bit of your time. Go check it out. Good book. So, now that we've got that done too, and got that bit of news out, we've got a great guest in store tonight, I think. Wouldn't you say, Kenny?
Absolutely. Right up my alley, for sure.
And for those who have seen the promo, you already know. For those who haven't seen the promo, we've got a gentleman on tonight, big on relic hunting, camp digging, bottle hunting, good relic hunter, great guy to talk to, and, from what I hear, quite the sharp dresser when he's not out digging, according to Mr. Joe Angel. But really, a great guy to talk to. He come up with an idea a while back of, hey, it'd be kind of handy maybe for people if they could just rent detectors. Especially for DIV, right? Because, people may like to try a PI machine down there. Well, this gentleman has been able to make arrangements to where people could do that if they'd like. So I'm sure we'll hear about his experiences tonight, as well as maybe a little bit about his detector rentals. So let's get him in here as soon as we can. The guest tonight is Johnny White, Jdug. How's it going?
It's going good. How y'all doing?
All right.
Man, we're doing good. We're doing good.
Definitely.
Well, I don't know how great I'm going to be, but we're going to give her a shot and see if we can enlighten a few people.
Well, I tell you what, man, what it is here is we're just sitting on the couch talking about relics, man, talking about how we do it, and that's what's so great about this show is we wait all week to talk about metal detecting, and that's exactly what we do. And man, I'll tell you, I got a question right off the bat. Well, I don't know if it's a question. Let me just say this, guys. If you hadn't seen any of the digs that Jdug here on YouTube has done, man, you got to go see that. Johnny, right off the bat, let me give you a compliment on how you do it, but not as much that as how you finish it. Because I've noticed when you walk off from a place, if somebody else comes walking through there, unless they're the absolute pro, they'll never know you were there. And that's commendable.
Yeah. Well, you know as well as I do how hard spots are to get. So if I can't make it look better than when I left, then there's an issue. At this point, I try to make the holes look as good as I can, but I've even gone to the extent where I threw out 4 bags of 25-pound bags of orchard grass for the landowner because he was having problems with the Johnson grass growing in there and was getting threatening letters from the state about he would get a fine if he didn't do something about the Johnson grass.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I make it the landowner's benefit for me to be there.
Right. And that's good. You know, and a lot of detectors out there don't understand what all's involved in digging these pits, and whether it be, you know, fire pits, trash pits, or you're hunting for bottles or whatever it is, because it doesn't take no time at all. That the relic dictates the hole. You just don't go in there and dig a big hole and hope you find something. I mean, you got to kind of go by what you're finding, and you inch your way through, and hopefully you can get into one of those that's got a little, you know, when you get down a couple of feet, that's got some rocks stacked up. It kind of gives you a direction, but there's more to it than people really understand.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
And that's with doing the whole bags of grass seed and stuff. That's good. It keeps the hobby in a good light, and it keeps up good public relations with the property owners for us.
Yeah, don't be surprised if he's over at my house for dinner when it comes time to look at the relics and all that at the end of the season. I mean, I try to make friends with him, and to be honest with you, a lot of the camps that I've been on has been references from other landowners. I can't remember the last time I went and I cold knocked on somebody's door, because
Well, that's awesome.
The farmers are all kind of connected, you know. And if you treat one right and you ask for a reference to maybe someone else, then it's way better than knocking on somebody's door, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It's like their own little niche or something. They all talk amongst each other, get around at the local restaurant for coffee in the morning, and the word spreads.
Right. And if you're in the right area, I mean, most of the time, unless you just read a book and ran across, you know, a regiment said this or somebody said that in a letter or something like that, most of the time you're going to figure out what division it was in what area. How was that division separated camp-wise and brigades and regiments and stuff like that. And most of the time they're all in the same area. So you get in with one farmer and do your research and figure out, you know, his relationships with the other farmers there and look for a reference. Most of the time it works out.
That's
it
good.
really just
That's
kind of
good.
it snowballs more or less, you know.
Right, one site turns into 2 to 3 to 4.
When I first started out, I wasn't even digging camps. I was, I guess, kind of like everybody else, you look for the easy spots near the battlefields and just try to get on property and stuff like that. And it really kind of, right from the get-go, it snowballed for me. I got on one guy's little piece of property there, and I treated him good. And the next thing you know, I'm doing his brother-in-law's property that's right next to his that's twice the size. Well, the next thing you know, their neighbor walks out in the field and invites me to do her property. Then the original landowner talks to his neighbor and lets me do her backyard that nobody's ever done. And I go in there and find a depression in this little 3-acre backyard that looks like an L-shaped trench line. Well, guess what? There's fired 69s all on one side and dropped 3-ringers on the other side of that trench line.
Wow.
And yeah, that's what's impressive, because there's a story right there. I mean, right on that one little spot, it tells its own story. This trench digging and the pit digging, most everybody though, Johnny, I believe, starts out, they it's like I've said on this show before, and even in some of my videos, everybody hunts point A and point B. It's the places in between where a lot of people don't get to because they don't have the research on it or don't know how to, or whatever the case may be. But they have to travel from here to there, and they got to bed down. And if it's good for one regiment, word spreads, and it's probably going to be good for another regiment. And you'll find those spots where several different ones stay in the same area, which you're all familiar with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I see we've got Linux and ring finders in the house here. Ain't seen him in a while.
Yeah, well, that's another DIV man. He's been busy, I guarantee you that. I know he probably hunted 29 and 30 and probably had a hunt or two after that, if I know him well enough. And Jdug, I'm sure you are familiar. I'm sure you guys have run into each other. Denny Morrison up there at DIV.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And I know I got another good buddy here in the crew I'm in, Miss Lou Relic crew, L.A. Gold. He met you, I think it was last fall, I believe it was.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah, John DeVille. That's when Turtle Man was up there, I believe.
Yeah, John's a good guy, man. He's a good-hearted guy. He gives me shout-outs on his videos and puts my Jdug metal detector stuff up there. You couldn't ask for a nicer guy.
Well, while we're on that, tell me just what day it was, what thought was that, was it because you were up there and you were hearing guys going, wow, man, I'm using these, VLF machine. I need a PI machine. I just can't go out and spend $3,000 or $4,000 on a machine. And did you just come up with, well, maybe I can solve that issue for some of these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I really just ended up with so many detectors before the thought even entered my mind. I mean, for the DIV hunts, I ended up with 2 pulse machines because you got to have a backup. And besides that, I already had 2 CTXs, Cibola, White's V3i. And I said, man, these things are just sitting around here. I should just rent them out. And I actually called John Kendricks about it, and he said, well, I wouldn't even really think about it if I was you because, it's going to take so many hunts for you to make your money back. And I was like, well, I'm not really worried about the money. I really just kind of want to provide a service. And, if I make a little money, that's fine. If I don't, that's fine too. But the only place that I really rent for is DIV. There's a few other hunts out there, but I rarely ever get any calls for them. I think Relic Bob's hunt overlapped the DIV hunt this year, so I got 1 or 2 calls for his hunt, but since the hunts were overlapped, I was overbooked, so I couldn't do it. But it was really just to provide a service, and I felt like DIV really kind of made me a better relic hunter. So I really wanted to stay in that and keep my foot in the door, and that was one way to do it too. Become a sponsor.
Absolutely.
And so I could always be a part of it.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, there's no secret. The PI machines, if you're digging, You know, if you're digging, especially those pits and huts and stuff, and you're looking for stuff that's, you know, you might as well say 2 feet deep or better. You're not going to go in there with some of those other machines. It's just not gonna work for you. You're gonna find some stuff around fence rows, maybe in the woods, different stuff like that. But when you get down into the depths of those farms out there, you need to get down there and click on something.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I just remember seeing guys that had never been to one of these hunts or had been to a couple and maybe were there when it was like a virgin spot. But then as it got harder and the relics got a little bit deeper, some of these guys the last 2 days were sitting at the truck for 2 days, just frustrated because they couldn't find anything. But
yeah, they come to find that we have to possibly change technology or hunting technique or something like that to continue to kick up those items.
yeah, I mean, the first time I went down there and got in that hot soil, I thought for sure, like, I got a CTX. It's, a pretty high-end machine that I can adjust the settings, the soil settings or timings or something, and pick it up. Well, I went down there, and I got it out of the truck. I opened like a 5-inch hole, put a bullet down in there, didn't even put the soil back on top of it, and couldn't even hear it.
Wow.
And I was like, man, now I see what these guys are going through,
Right, because
I'm living it firsthand.
There for a while, a lot of guys, I would see posts, and not mentioning any names and stuff like that, but you would see posts like, well, they're trying to sell this machine or that machine, but no. That dirt over there, if you even want to call it dirt, it's probably iron with some dirt in it.
Right.
But, I look at a lot of this. What's that one video, the YouTube channel, comparing detectors or something like that. And,
Detector comparisons.
Yes, he grabs, 5-6 inches of that dirt, but that's 5 or 6 inches. That's going to tell you a little bit of the story, but when you're trying to find a hut, man, you're going to have to go deeper than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Or when you're trying to dig bullets and plates and stuff from 14 and 18 inches deep. Well,
all right.
5 or 6 inches isn't going to give you much of a benchmark to work with.
Right. This is probably not going to help my rental business any, but the last time we went, not this last time, but the time before we went to Brandy Rock, I spent 3 days over there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Brandy Rock, but there's my beloved bean field down there, and I've spent 6 days in a 50-yard area. And all I did was go down there and start turning soil. I just looked for places where the iron blanked out and started turning soil. Took a magnet with me and removed as much iron as I could. And in 3 days, I don't remember what my totals was, but I know I dug 30 buttons. And I never left like a 30-yard spot in those 3 days. And then the other 30 or 40-yard spot was right next to where I was at the previous DIV. And I used a pulse machine then, but it can be done. You just got to use your shovel a lot more.
You got to be very persistent.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I see some videos with the daises going in there now, and they're finding stuff. I see. Well, for example, you see Nugget Noggin with the AT Pro or Gold. He goes up and he hits those road beds. Well, and he's finding these flat bullets that's been run over for decades now. And, he finds a lot of stuff like that with those machines. But what I'm talking about is if I'm going to if I want to go in there and I want to get in there and find some huts, and I want to, get to where I'm digging down 3 foot or whatever, you really are going to need that better machine. You're going to need that PI machine to get the job done. There's no doubt about it.
Well, and it's no big secret. Some machines are better suited for certain applications than others.
I'll tell you, one of the main attributes for the GPX, besides its depth in that hot soil, is the fact that it's a non-motion detector. So what I do in a lot of cases is, if I don't have like a big 18-inch coil in there looking for huts, I'll dig a hole big enough to get that coil down in, and you can basically stick that coil down in there in the hole and pinpoint where that target is to within inches, because it's not a motion. So you can raise it and lower it in different spots, and the spot that it's the loudest is where the target is.
Correct.
So how many times have you been digging somewhere and said, well, hey, I wish I could just take 8 inches off of this dirt? Well, every time you dig a hole, that's your opportunity to take 8 inches off.
I do it all the time.
Yeah. And there's a few other detectors, I think, that do that. I know that I've done a little bit of pit digging with the Deos, and it's got a very responsive side coil, so you don't even have to have the base of the coil on the target, but you can just run it up and down the side with the coil flat, and it picks it up that way. So
yeah, I'm highly impressed with the Deus. I went and got one, and you got to spend some time with it, like you do with any other machine. Right. You got to spend some time with it, but I also use the Garrett's. I use the AT Pros, the AT Gold, and the Deus, and I like all of the machines. There's something about each one I like. It's like today, for example, I took the Deus out over to this one spot, and the bullets, it just had that clean, smooth sound, that tone that you just want to hear right in the middle of all that iron, and that's when you get excited. It's when you got a machine that can actually separate. I was running Deus fast, so it can separate those targets really quick.
Yeah, it's that if you get into an iron-infested area and say there's 4 square nails in there and a bullet, it literally sounds like a machine gun. You hear everything in the ground. It's like
it does. Yeah, it does. And when you got your tones set, like I set my tones for my hearing, and that's why I like the Deus, is because you can set those tones. Because nobody hears the same. It's like a fingerprint. I mean, the tone I hear may be different. You may be hearing that tone different. And I like that because I set it to where it benefits me. And I'm pretty much, now that I've been using it for a while, and I get in the iron, or maybe there's even some foil in there, which every machine gets looped on that here and there, but it will separate all that out. You can find that bullet right in the middle of them nails with no problem.
Yeah. Yep. Before that, I guess the little Cibola was my kind of iron infested area, but I ran across something with the CTX where I could in the 2-tone mode and put iron reject on, and if I went over a iron target and a good target together, it would only see that as one good target and beep.
Right.
And it doesn't always work depending on how big the iron is and how big the target is, but
really nothing's completely foolproof.
Right.
No, right. And a lot of times, and especially I've had to learn this with this Deus, because this Deus goes deeper than I actually thought that this machine would go, but it goes deep. Yeah. A lot of times when you hit a target that deep and you're getting that iron sound, that's ground noise you're getting. There's not a nail there, and that's you're so deep that it's giving you what iron's in the ground, or just the iron itself. I'm not talking about a nail or an item or anything like that, but it's ground sound you're getting in between you and that target, and you just got to go get it.
Yeah.
Right.
What kind of depth are you getting out of that machine? I've only really used the recommended iron settings, so I'm not really using it for depth, but.
Yeah, I've been. Let's use it. Let's put it this way. I created a deep program for that machine because I was hunting at a place close to Shiloh. Well, most of that farmland, as you very well know, has been turned, and there's terraces and this and that. So you usually over a period of time, the days of your 4-inch targets where people hunt are about over. They're about gone. You're gonna have to go down there. But I dug ringtails at 15 inches.
Good grief.
Yeah, and that's with the 11-inch coil.
Right.
Yep, sure enough. And the thing about it is, you'll hear the glip on it. You'll hear, because I've got my the high tone that I have set. I max it out at 800, and then when you go over it, you'll get that. You'll get that glitch, and on your VLS, if you're looking at your TDI numbers or whatever, which I very rarely do, but when I do, they won't even register. So I take 3 or 4 inches off of that soil, and then then it's really coming in.
Right.
And
Yeah,
just
I
go down
haven't
and
messed
get it.
with the depth settings. I've seen a few YouTube videos about the depth settings on there, but it doesn't seem like the two combined. Like the depth settings and the iron settings are two different total beasts, right?
Well, it's what you know. What you can set your frequencies. You need to match the frequencies with it. You got 4, 8, 17, 11, which will, go deeper and deeper. But the real trick to it is your silence and your reactivity. They work together in harmony. So you have to kind of set those to work together, and I'll PM you and give you some ideas. I should just do a video on my own on that DAS, but what I've been doing with it, because
I
there's
run
certain
straight,
settings.
like the 1800, and kind of start at reactivity of 3, and basically just the kind of generic settings. I think my iron rejects is like 8.5, and I just run it for the iron infested areas. And if I was using it for pits, but since going to the last DIV and having such good luck with sticking that coil in the ground and getting such good depth from it, I kind
Right,
of
if you're running an 11-inch coil on it, put it on DAS fast, and it'll blast through that iron, and whatever targets is in there is going to be separated for you.
Right.
So, it will. Yeah, I would use DAS fast on that.
Okay.
Well then.
I learned
And
something.
how did you get into the hobby, Johnny?
I started out digging bottles with my grandmother down in Harrod County, Maryland, when I was a kid, and we couldn't afford metal detectors back then, so I just never did it. I would go out and search the spots in the woods, because the farmers used to just drive around and dump their bottles, and me and my grandmother would go out there and dig them. She had a whole upstairs full of stuff that she dug out that would mind boggle you, but and then I just kind of got at it, typical teenage years into marriage and all that other stuff, and then started collecting coins. And I was like, you know what? I should go out and get a metal detector and find my own coins. and that's what I did. I went out and got my White's V3i, because I had an old guy down the street that was telling me he knew a spot that there was this old guy had never told anybody, and they were digging gold out of this stream. So I went to the metal detector guy up here in Boonesboro, Maryland, Battlefield Detectors, and I said, man, I want something that I can put the coil in the water and maybe hear some gold. And he had the E-Track there and the White's V3i, and he sold me the White's V3i, and I went out and metal detected. First thing I did was went downtown and went to where all the parking meters were in grass, and I dug $67 and change in 8 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So then I started thinking more about it, and I went to all the one-way streets in downtown Frederick where people would get out on the driver's side on a one-way street on the left-hand side, and drop their stuff. And I got more change and ended up with 2 silver coins and a silver ring doing that. So
nice.
Then I started going around and talking. I talked to the dad of a guy I went to high school with and said, man, where's some old sites I can go find some stuff? And he said, well, man, just go right up there behind your shop. On your property, there used to be an old log cabin up there 90 years ago. They moved it with mules and brought it down here, and it's now my kitchen. So he said, yeah, walk on up here with me. So we walk up there, and he kicks a brick. He said, well, there's a brick from the chimney right there. So I went back down and got my metal detector, and the first thing I dug up was an eagle button.
Wow.
I thought to myself, oh my God, this is Civil War. I called the guy I bought the metal detector from, and I was so happy. Like, I just dug an eagle button. Of course, he's just like, oh, well, that's great. Because, he's been digging Civil War stuff his whole life. And then I got the bug. I was like, wow, if I can find Civil War stuff, there might be still stuff out there. I just figured, everybody done dug it all up by now. And I ended up getting 6 buttons out of there, 2 box plates, a breastplate, 100 and some flat buttons, a couple bullets, some jewelry, and then I had the bug. That's when I went to the battlefield park there in Frederick, Monocacy Battlefield, and bought a couple books and started reading. And a soldier mentioned on his way to Gettysburg that they passed their old camp and the huts were still there. And ever since then I've been hooked. So I started doing regimental research.
And now, for those who, let's say, are just now getting into, let's say hut hunting or pets in general, myself, when I go out and I kind of, you see the golfers getting down and looking to see how they're going to putt this green here. I kind of look at the land. I kind of hunch down and see if there's any, like some dips and some little dents or some sinkholes. Those are always worth investigating. Is that kind of what you do as well?
Yeah, I mean, I basically just started out just digging signals, and then that kind of just snowballed into, with my research, I know the huts are there.
Right.
So every time I dug a hole, I just took it down to the subsoil. And I found, on the camp I'm on now, I found 17 fire pits and, some shallow ones and some deep ones that were inside huts.
Color. That's the key, the color of the dirt.
Yeah. I mean, down in Culpeper, it's a little bit harder. I haven't quite mastered that red dirt down there. Unless you hit ash, it can be hard to tell what's what down there. But in Maryland, Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, Northern Virginia, all the places I go to, once you get down 16 inches, it just changes colors.
Right.
You got your topsoil and then you got your bottom soil, and if that subsoil is not there, there's something there.
And we are joined by Ring Finder.
Mr.
Hi guys,
Danny.
how you doing?
Almost forgot what you sounded like.
I know. I've been busier than all get out, I'm telling you.
Well, good.
Good
I
to hear
noticed
you.
your finds. Congratulations on the breastplate.
Thank you. Hi, Johnny. How you doing?
Good, Dennis. How you doing?
Good. I got a really great picture of John. I told him he should use it for his business card. He had a boot on top of his car, and it was pouring down rain, and it's got Jdug on it. And I got a picture of that at Randy Rock, in fact. Right, Johnny?
Yes, sir. That's when I was down there in that bean field.
Yeah, I was in that bean field for 3 days, never left. That's where I got my first breastplate. Yep.
Yeah, that place is amazing. I didn't go in there this recent time because they had planted it in corn, and I just don't like corn stubble.
Well, and I was in there, John, and I couldn't do nothing in there. And finally we hit a field that I asked John to open up many times, and he said, well, there's nothing in that field. My first day there, I dug 43 bullets, so there must have been something there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of drops and a lot of shot. And John says, well, that's a firing range. And I said, there was too many drops and too many buttons in that field to be a firing range. So
that's the key, the brass and the iron. If they got that in there, something else is going on.
Yeah,
well, and you don't really lose too many buttons while you're at a firing range.
No, that's what I tried to tell him.
Unless you're on the wrong end of the firing range.
Yeah, and I think that's what it was, because they were both sharp. There were Confederates and Yankee bullets up there, so I think I was just part of the battle. The Yankees came in there, and they chased out the Confederates. Duh. They're going to shoot at somebody. So,
right.
I mean, although they camped there 5 months, the Confederates were in that camp long before the Yankees were ever there. So
yeah, I watched the guy dig a TS tongue over there where I was digging at this recently, right below the landowner's house.
Well, you know, over there where you come in at, where that sign's at, Brandy Rock, I mean, my gosh, just look at that. A field from there is where the Confederates were camped all winter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, how crazy is that?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool place.
I managed to scrape me a North Carolina State button now that the far backfield where they dig all those Nestlers and the Nestler shotgun slugs, the Confederate ones.
Yeah, I got some of those too. Yeah, those are pretty cool. And, yep. I got some of those over at Cedar Mountain one time too, North Carolina. The ones the blind kids made.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's the story in itself. I mean, can you imagine? Those kids made over 1 million bullets, and they were blind. Can you imagine how many times they burnt themselves on that lead when they were pouring them?
That's
it's
unbelievable.
Amazing.
Well, I can attest when you're doing something like that, you get burnt a few times. You learn how to hold it.
Yeah, that's for sure. I just want to say, you know, somebody's talking about finding huts, and in Brandy, it's really hard. You can't tell. There's the dips. Although over at the Button Hill, John, years ago when I was there, it was early in the morning. We had a dew on the ground, and I looked through there and I said, "Wow, look at all the huts," and I could just see a different color of the dew. And the guy saw, "Oh, that's not huts." And I said, "Well, at that time I didn't dig huts." I said, "Well, go ahead and dig one, son of a gun." If he didn't dig a $50 out of one of them, a seed seeded $50 from before the Civil War, and I forget what else he got out. A couple bottles, and then the other guys started digging, and they lined them right up. And at that time, I didn't know every 4 pits would have been a trash pit at the end of the 4 huts. So, when I found my breastplate this time at the Excelsior camp, I didn't even surface hunt anymore. I just started digging holes. I must have dug 20 holes, but I learned a lot up there. I mean, these guys that know how to dig huts really taught me a lot. So
it makes you a better hunter going to DIV. I will say that.
Yeah.
I dug a couple trash pits on a brigade camp and hadn't really figured them out. And I went down there and I watched Doug Harris probe all day long and take core samples without a metal detector.
Yeah,
and the little bell in my head went off, and I said, "Wow, I need to get one of those and take it to my brigade camp and figure out what's going on with those trash pits."
Yeah,
well,
right.
It wasn't until I did that I figured out that 4 of those trash pits were connected by latrine lines.
That's right.
You know? And if I'd have never went to DIV, I'd have never learned that.
If you read Hudson, man, I got that book. It was put out by archaeologists and guys who metal detected. They put this book together, and it tells you how they laid out camps. And I mean, if you were an officer even today, they lay out the camps same today as they did back then, actually. And pretty interesting. And I put a couple pictures on the internet already of those huts, how they lay them out. And I mean,
they had a system to how they did that.
Exactly, and the Excelsior camp's a really good camp for that, because we actually, on the first time we hunted there, the field was mowed down. This time was not mowed. I mean, if you didn't have a PI machine, you would have really had a tough time because the grass was really high. But the first time you went out there, you could actually mark off 4 huts and a trash pit, 4 huts, trash pit. And I know one guy dug a trash pit and dug 40 New York Excelsior buttons out of 1 hole.
Nice.
Jeez.
And I was real close to there and got my first bottle, cross cannons, 30 bullets. It was crazy. And that was my first hut I ever really dug by myself.
So, they were really tearing up the bottles and trash pits, like the shallowest trash pits I'd ever seen. Like, just not even down to the subsoil. Right there when you come down the hill out of headquarters.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a few people, and they were saying, well, they think headquarters was probably the officers' quarters, but what's the chance of them having all those trash pits between the main body of the camp and the headquarters? Pretty slim, right?
Well, if you look at one of my pictures that I put on, the officers were actually setting up where our headquarters was at, and they looked down on the hill. And you can, if you look at the picture, there's tents straight down that hill, exactly where those guys were digging, and to the left and the right. Yep. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank God for Brady when he took all those nice pictures for us.
Yeah, because
Well,
you can
I
go
actually
back and
didn't-
look at some of that stuff and see some stuff you didn't think about before.
That's right. Yeah. It's it's too bad he didn't get over Shiloh a little bit sooner. I mean, the reason all the pictures are taken in that area is close to Washington D.C. They could go over there in a day by train. No big deal. But you go on out west, you got a little tougher, and it would have been nice if they had even taken more pictures down in the Confederate camps, but they never did. I mean, there's a few, but not very many. And most of the
Right.
pictures you see are from in Virginia. And that's just where they travel to. They travel in Virginia, and on most of your pictures you're going to see is on the net are from Virginia.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've been lucky enough to find two of the camps that I've dug to find pictures of the camp. The one camp that I dug early on when I first started, the first one I found, they actually had condos. So it was basically all one building and all one company. So it was just a row of one building separated with 15 guys in each
I've seen
wall
that
partitions.
Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
that picture.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
And then the camp I'm on now, I found two pictures of that. And I was telling these guys earlier before we got online that I'm actually digging fire pits of huts that I could actually see in the picture. I just recently
Wow.
dug the guardhouse because it's the only one that's that far north, south, or west in the camp that's that big, and got an inkwell out there, a big whiskey bottle, and a gun oil bottle, and the inkwell actually had the pennant still inside of it.
Oh, wow.
Wow. I mean,
Right.
when you can look on the left hand, you're holding, a photo or pictures, and then here you are knowing exactly what you're digging. That just makes it all that much more special.
Yeah, I've actually GPS marked every fire pit that I've dug, and it lines up perfectly with everything in the camp. So I've dug 3 of the officers' quarters on the far end of the camp of captains, and the guard hut, and then the actual regimental part of it is just so mix and match. It really doesn't even look like rows. It's tents, it's rectangle huts, it's square huts. There's even like a 2-story hut in there in the picture. It's mind-boggling.
Wow.
All right. Well, thanks for the call, Denny.
All right. Talk to you all later. Bye now.
All right,
We'll
Denny.
see.
All right.
Hello, caller.
Hey, Josh, what's happening?
How's it going, Mr. John DeVille?
Mr. John L.A. Gold himself.
What do you say, buddy?
Oh, not much. Just want to call in and chat with y'all for a few minutes. I got a couple other guys that can come on the show.
Yeah, if you noticed, Kenny, I kept kind of glancing down here at my phone. I've been getting all sorts of messages. John's been messaging me. He's got a couple of guests maybe for an upcoming show for us. Let's see, Rob messaged me. He threw a post out there on Facebook about us. And Swansea down there in the chat with Ohio Relic Hunter and Two-Tone Joe and Kojo. Swansea's been out at Bone and hit himself a half-real. Which
Man.
hopefully, Swansea, if you're out there at Bone, you're sporting that Beyond Sight and Sound shirt.
There you go.
And, Kojo actually just uploaded a video on YouTube today. I'll have to check that out after the show or tomorrow morning.
Man, there's a lot going on. Yeah, and we're always looking for guests to come on here and tell us their experiences. And we learn something. I learn something every show. Like, I'm learning a lot on this show. Question for you, Mr. Johnny. Some would argue this, some wouldn't. But my belief, and it would make sense to me, is when you're in a camp, and I'm talking let's say a substantial camp, the officers were normally in the center of the camp for security. True or false?
The ones that I've done, it has not been the case.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
I've done 2 regimental camps and 1 big brigade camp I spent 2.5 years on, and the brigade camp was just a little mix and match. It was a New York in there, a Massachusetts, a little bit of the 1st Maryland. Actually, it was called Putnam Rangers at the time, and they were just, the New York seemed to be the most organized, where you could tell where everything was, but as far as the other stuff, and they were just kind of in a mixed match area, you know.
Right.
And
See,
then,
I always thought maybe the officers got just the best looking ground. Just hey, you know, this is my pick. This is where I'm going to put mine. I like it right here. This is where I want to be, and that was it.
Right.
Yeah. It just seems like the one that was all in rows, the company captains were at the end of the row, and then the officers were kind of in a separate field off to the side. And then
altogether separate.
Yeah. So, and then the one that I'm digging now, they're all kind of, all the captains' rows are to the left, mix and match. They're not even lined up with the companies that they belong to. And
so
then,
there's not even a consistency from camp to camp then.
No. Mm-mm.
Wow.
No, and you know what? Miles on the trail, the certain point of the war, the morale probably depended on a lot of how those camps were set up when they got there, what physical condition they were when they were setting the camps up. It varies to each camp due to probably the conditions of the regiment themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And what their building techniques were, you know.
Right.
If they had tents, if they didn't have tents. I mean, one of the captain's quarters I dug up last week had a slate floor in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Slate floor.
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't the whole hut. Probably more than likely the guy had a stove in there, because I didn't find any color or ash in it. But it was a good 5x8 area that was just solid slate.
So even in the times of war like that, some of them still had luxuries.
Well, most of the camps I dig up north here, between Northern Virginia and Charlestown and Maryland, is all early camps. So these guys, they hadn't even really been on maneuvers yet.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, they might have been at Bull Run, the first Bull Run or something like that, and then licking their wounds afterwards,
right.
basically, and still carrying around stoves. They hadn't really traveled anywhere, so a lot of them had stoves and ovens and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right, and kind of before they really went to roughing it.
Yeah. So I even in the research, when they leave the camps, a lot of them talk about trying to haul all that stuff and end up leaving it alongside the road, and the farmers come along and pick it up and take it home with them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because they soon realize that you got to travel lightly.
Right, and going, oh, this is just too much hassle. Let's just get there.
Right. Well, when your regiment marches 15 miles a day, but your wagon train can't keep up because they're hauling stoves and stuff, and they only make it 10 miles a day, and you sleep on the ground, you learn to change things up a little bit.
Right. We got to bring everybody closer together and move as one cohesive unit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know L.A. Gold's been out digging, too.
Oh, man. It's been a blast. It's slowing down on me now. I found a few Confederate buttons and that shell, but it's hard to come by here. They work for it. You gotta get me a GPR so I can start digging some huts.
I tell you what, man, that thing is a blessing.
I bet.
It didn't work too good for me down at DIV. I had a little trouble seeing through that iron.
I was about to ask you how I did over there.
I took it out there, and I spent half a day pushing it around at the Excelsior camp, and I was just riding over top of stuff. They dug trash pits that I rode right over, and I just couldn't see it. And then I guess on day 2, I got it out of the truck, I hauled it out in the field, and I had went down to the hotel bar and got a whiskey bottle from the bar that was empty, and took it and got in somebody's pit that they had dug the day before and put it in the sidewall, dug out a little pocket for it, and drove over 6 times. I couldn't see it. I said, wow, I know I can see glass with this thing because I've seen it every other time I've drove over it, but the soil just wouldn't let me see that glass. And I did drive over one rock. It was about 4 foot deep, a big rock, and I probed it and I hit it and I core sampled it, and I really didn't get any color out of there. And I really think that Cumberland Gray, Tony, ended up digging it up and get a box plate and a breastplate out of there because he said that somebody had probed it twice and hit that rock because you could see the probe all the way down through the soil when he dug it out.
Wow.
So it was either me or Doug Harris because we were both kind of in the same area there for a while.
Wow.
That's cool. That's cool.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to get into some of the ones up here. I actually asked John and Kevin that I have this virgin camp up here. It's not what you would call a big parking lot size camp. It's more like a little bit bigger than a picket camp, but I know there's trash pits there, obviously, and the fire pits are there. So I'm going to get into those and start slinging the dirt. And I have found a lot of iron spots in there, and that's a pretty good indicator where I need to start.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Well, whenever you're ready, Mr. Kenny, after we do this little thing we've been talking about, then we'll...
Yeah, I actually...
Right.
Let me run by that real quick. I can't talk about it much. I talked to... Let's just put it this way. The Miss Lou Relic crew, we have a little opportunity coming up, actually, a project that will probably... The final part of it for us will be in I think the 3rd week of June, and it involves a camera crew, and we'll just leave it at that because we can't really talk about it until after this Friday.
Right. Basically, there's an opportunity that has arisen that once everything's said and done, I think we'll have a good show.
Yeah, probably so.
Is that something? I don't want to bring it up too much, but is that something you guys worked out? Because I got a call from a guy and did a Skype interview with a channel. I'm not going to say any names that were looking to do a show. Did they contact you, or did you guys kind of put something together and contact them?
No, I got contacted through another source, and the original deal was supposed to be done up in this area where I'm at, northern Mississippi, southern Tennessee, northern Mississippi. And then after they got looking at all the history and stuff, they'll probably come back to this area later. They wanted to go a little bit further in southern Mississippi area, down around in there. And I was like, well, here we go. Now I'll get the whole crew involved.
Right.
So it just kind of got laid at my feet, kind of. It was kind of interesting how that happened. I'm not going to get into it right now, but it seemed to have worked out so far. And we can actually comment on it a little bit more after this Friday. I talked to them today, and they said, "Yeah, don't say too much till after this Friday." And I was like, "Okay." And then, but the 3rd week of June, they should be some cameras rolling. It should be fun for the crew. So we need to get our shirts made up, brother John.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on a couple other guys too for the website, man. I'm waiting on Digging and Mr. Don to do their little profile for us. I would already release the site, if I could get them to do their part. They've still got little changes to make on it, but it's coming along.
Good, yeah, it looks pretty. It looks good. I'm impressed with it.
That stuff does take time.
Yeah. Now, your displays. I love how you do your displays on your finds,
Love
Johnny.
that lamp.
Yeah, love that. Do you, as many huts as you dig, as many spots, do you, unless you have a gymnasium for a house, I'm just thinking, do you set up a display for each one of those, or do you set up one big display maybe for the camp itself?
I basically, as of right now, I'm trying to keep everything separate. I used to just lay all the bullets out with it, and then I had to move once, and that got out of control. So that's how the lamp came about, and I got 2 other big jugs that look like period whiskey bottles that I've got 175 69s in one, and it's only a third full, so it's huge. But I try to keep them all together. I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to stack stuff on top of stuff.
Right.
I'm sure you guys are familiar with.
Well, I actually transport I'm in Mississippi here, but I have property. I have a farm, long farm in Tennessee there. So when I get stuff here, I'll take over there, and then when I get enough here again, then I'll take back over there. So it's kind of take it from one spot to another.
Yeah, my stuff doesn't travel too good.
No.
We have I got a monthly relic club meeting, and I leave most of it sit out loose until then, and then it goes into a case or a table that's particular to that camp. And
correct.
As long as I can keep it that way and don't run out of room, that's what I plan on doing. So.
Well,
Wow.
It looks good, man. I tell you what, you're good for the hobby. Everybody needs to have the ethics that you carry as far as digging the huts, replacing them like you found them, and just give the landowner satisfaction. Because when you're getting invites from the farmer next door and then the farmer next door, you know you're doing something right. Because if you were doing something wrong, it would have the adverse reaction, and that would be bad. So keep it up, keep filming, because we like seeing it, and just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yes, sir. I tell you what helps me get those huts even neater is making the proper size hole. I mean, if you're digging in the woods, it's not that big of a deal, but when you're digging in pasture like that or hay fields that the crops need to go back the way they were, when you know how big to make a hole, especially in these big rock pits, you can't start in the center. You don't know what a big nightmare that is to try to start in the center of a rock pit and remove rocks.
Right.
So,
And be widening your hole as you go.
Yeah, and end up with overhangs that don't fill in good. So even when I mark something with the GPR, I know a basic size of it. But like I was talking about earlier with Doug Harris and that coring probe, you can core down and probe and see where the sidewalls are. Pull out a core sample and know basically how big to dig that hole. And if you dig a hole with straight walls down and don't have overhangs, it's going to fill in a lot better.
Right. And you know what? For those that's just out there getting into this, don't be afraid to ask. I'm sure Jdug would answer your questions. I'm sure somebody else. Don't just get in there and guesswork it. You could damage whatever's in there, bottles, whatever. Just run some test runs and go with people that's done it. If you can get privileged enough to go along for the ride, so to speak, and watch how somebody that knows what they're doing does it, it would be the best way for anybody to learn how to. But it's a lot different than just swinging across the ground and hitting some bullets and buttons and even a plate here and there. It's a whole different world when you start hitting that subsoil.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the better prepared you are going in, the better job you're going to do.
Absolutely.
One of the tricks that I've learned as far as not breaking bottles is just start off knowing how big your hole is, but then get a sidewall open where you know the sidewall is and start at the outside and take that one corner all the way down to the bottom with your leshy tool. Don't dig it with a shovel, but just take it all the way down with your leshy tool, loosen the dirt a little bit, and take that loose dirt out. And then when you start expanding out into the pit, just take one of your probes and slide it down the sidewall, maybe only an inch or two, and then just pop that sidewall off. And lots of times, instead of, because if you shave that with your shovel, 9 times out of 10, you're going to shave the neck right off a bottle.
So basically, get yourself a good starting point and then start slowly working your way through.
Yeah, if you get that one corner all the way down to subsoil, where below the ash line or whatever, the sidewall as it tapers in, some of them really taper in and have a bowl shape, others just go straight down. But if you get in that corner and then get you a nice open spot, you can actually slide those probes down around the edges of that, pop the dirt loose, and it breaks, well, depending on how hard it is. In drought season, it can be quite nerve-wracking. You can barely break the ground, and you're trying not to break bottles. But using that probe has really been a lifesaver for me. When I first started, I didn't really know I was doing too much, and I broke a few bottles with the shovel and even the leshy tool, because you just start getting too carried away. But if you're just sliding that probe down in that sidewall within the pit and popping that dirt loose, you more than likely you're just going to graze that bullet or that bottle and hear that squeak, and just pop the sidewalls off, and it just magically appears.
Right, right, and there it is.
That's got to be
looking at you
Wow.
Seeing daylight for the first time in 153 years. You know, and Denny brought up something on here, and when I hunt, let's say in this town I'm in, it's a very Civil War town, and when I hunt the yards, I lay out a towel so I can get all the holes, you know, the dirt that was in that hole back in there and put it all nice and neat. It's the same, I suppose, when you're digging those pits out in that farmland too, to have a nice good tarp that you can put everything on so you can, you know, get it back where it belongs.
Oh, absolutely.
I get a 9-foot tarps from basically Home Depot that have drawstrings and no grommets in them, so there's no metal in them. And usually one fire pit or deep hut fire pit, I can get all in one tarp, but there's been an occasion where it takes 2.
Wow. It's a lot of digging, a lot of patience, a lot of preserving.
And a lot of persistence and determination.
But that's what it is. I mean, you're digging up history that's not seen sunlight. You're digging up stuff that needs to be preserved. There's a lot of folks out there, that's for another show, that would rather just sit there and dissipate and the heck with it and all that.
Yeah.
And God, it tears me up. There's been many a fellas, and of course we know all of them now are gone, that would say, man, you found my breastplate? Man, that is awesome. I am so glad that you have that. I mean, I couldn't think of one of them that would want their stuff just to lay there and just not be thought about or anything. So that's with me, even a bullet. I don't care what it is. It's all important to me and to Jdug and everybody that's on here, I'm sure. So just once again, I've seen a lot of pits dug. I saw a lot of huts dug. I watch your videos. I've checked on you a little bit on those holes you dig and the after effects. You do a great job, man. So I'll just say it again. Keep on doing it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Very commendable in the way that you are doing things. And by all means, continue and keep digging and keep preserving that history.
Yeah, Denny wanted me to ask you a question real quick, although you had already covered it. It's probably before Denny came in. He wanted to ask about the guy who just used a probe at DIV and never used a detector. Denny, he did go over that, and that was impressive to watch the guy, I'm sure, doing his homework, using his skill with that probe, actually doing research with a probe before he ever, you know, got into what he was really about to do.
Yeah. Right. He's a beast with that thing, and he just is nonstop. I mean, I'm kind of cheating with the GPR a little bit and kind of seeing what I can, the anomalies in the ground before I do it. But to watch that guy with his probe to just in the ground, hole after hole after hole after hole. But the key is that coring probe. It brings out that core sample.
Right.
Wow.
You know, so if you go down 16 inches and you pull out a core sample that ain't got no subsoil in it, by all means, take more samples.
Absolutely.
Right. Just keep going, keep trying.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's basically finding more bottles at DIV than just about anybody with $100 worth of equipment. Maybe a $50 singing probe, one of John Kay's singing probes, and then a coring probe to take the
Would
soil
love to have that guy on the show and have him discuss that. That
Yeah,
would be
absolutely.
really neat to be able to hear that from him. That's impressive.
Yeah, I never seen him on Facebook or YouTube videos. I know he records everything he does, but he's down in Richmond, so he's a ways off from everybody.
Right.
Yeah, I'd love to get a hold of somebody like that. I wouldn't even mind doing a show on, like, fossil hunters.
Yeah, well, that's what I did before I got it. That and artifacts. I think
Right.
LA Gold was the same way. We were both fossil and point hunters and stuff before we got into the other.
Right.
When all I had was, I didn't know what a metal detector. I used a shovel and a sifter was my tools,
Right.
and that was it.
Sounds like my grandmother.
Well, just real quick, because we're starting to run short on time. Out of all the detectors that you've used or have, do you find yourself being more partial to one than another? Like, do you have a favorite machine that you like to take out?
When I did that brigade camp, I basically swung the CTX with that 17-inch coil and did the whole camp with that. And I switched off to the GPX afterwards, and I couldn't get any deeper stuff out of the ground unless I put that big 18-inch monocoil on. So it's basically it doesn't have iron reject, but what I did with it was just go back over spots that didn't have a lot of iron in, then the low-lying areas where I could get some deeper signals.
Wow.
And got some more stuff out of it. But at this camp, the GPX has found more stuff. So
Oh, I see.
it's a close run. It's all circumstance, really. You know what I mean? We all wouldn't own 4 or 5 different detectors if there was one that did everything. you know?
Right. Each
Right.
one is better suited for certain areas or applications.
Right. And when it comes down to it, it's like a carpenter's tools. If you could build the whole house with a hammer, that's all you would own. But
Right.
it's not that way. And all the detectors that's coming out now has their spot, I do believe, and the difference of the hobbyist, because I hunt different than this guy or whatever, and we all use detectors for different reasons. Josh, I know we're short time. You may want to mention a little something about the drawing, real quick, if you don't mind.
All right. Any final words from you, Johnny, on say tip on anybody just getting into the hobby?
Tips for people just getting into the hobby. I mean, if just go out there and read your books, do your research, and experiment a little bit. I guess the number one thing advice I could give to somebody is don't get set in your ways.
Right. Stay open-minded.
Stay open-minded. Don't get set into like maybe one detector, or depending on your financial situation, or particularly one settings. Experiment and find your niche. Do your research, experiment, and always be open to new things. And it seems like it'll open new avenues.
And would you like to let folks know where they can find you? Your YouTube channel, website, anything like that?
Well, I'm basically Jdug on YouTube. I got a Facebook page for my rentals that I really just do word of mouth. I don't really do a whole lot, but you can contact me on there, and I'm Johnny White on Facebook. I spend a lot of time on there because it seems to be the most responsive, interactive, as far as people getting back to you and having conversations and stuff like that. So
Okay.
and then my website is jdugdetectors.com, and you can send me emails through there or whatever. And I'll be happy to answer anybody's questions.
Okay.
Except where my spots are.
Right. And, we have certainly had a blast talking with you and really enjoyed the time. And there's just so many more questions. We'd love to have you back again sometime if you'd entertain that notion.
Yeah, I would certainly enjoy that. I actually wondered what we were going to talk about all this time, but it seems like we've only been on the show for like a half hour now. I don't know.
I know, time just flies.
Yeah, we were going to talk about that GPZ that I used the other day, and we never even did that. So, by all means, just give me a shout anytime. Even if I'm not the main character or supporting role or something, and you got a topic that you just want some insight on, or maybe Kenny can help me out with my...
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he'll be in contact with you about that.
Yeah, I'll do what I can. All I can do is tell you what works for me.
Hey,
right.
That's all that matters.
All right. And for those listening, as Kenny mentioned, the upcoming thank you drawing for everyone that has shown support in the situation at hand with him and his family. I will be getting a post up soon of the items that we have that we will be doing a drawing on here very, very soon. I believe we will be going into the process of doing the drawing. We'll probably do it on a live show, just make a show out of it, and that'll probably be May 6th. You can go to the BeyondSightAndSound.com domain. There's a photo slideshow up right now of some of those items. I will get a list up of the items that we will be handing out just as a thank you, a token of appreciation to some lucky people. Items including a Dirt Bandit tested and approved AT Pro, a lead inlay of a breastplate, a number of coins, Mercs, Buffalo nickels, a V nickel, Kennedy half. I know myself and Rob have both donated a Silver Eagle, the digger that Swansea donated, the duffel bag that the digger and duffel bag will go, has a package with the AT Pro. That way, if that person maybe isn't in the hobby, they'll have everything they need to get started. Other than that, check out the Beyond Sight and Sound website, beyondsightandsound.com. If you enjoyed the show, you know the drill. Like, rate, throw us a comment. You want to be a guest on the show, drop me a line. Topic you want to see covered. Hey, I'm not hard to find, really. It's pretty easy, and, Johnny can probably attest, really, it's painless. You may even have a good time.
Absolutely.
I can vouch for that.
So, we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us for a while here tonight, Johnny. We got to roll, though, folks. For those that followed Detect America, they had a bit of an issue last night that postponed the show, so they're running an extended version of TNL tonight over on live stream after we wrap up. Number of prizes slated for giveaways. Sounds like there's some pretty good ones, too. Some Civil War items, so yeah, we'll definitely have to check that out, and that's over on live stream. I'm sure most of the followers have probably seen a link posted somewhere already by this point, but we need to get out of here and make some room for them too, since we're trying to squeeze both shows into one night. So other than that, we appreciate everyone for tuning in. We appreciate you for hanging in there, Johnny, and we're going to roll out. So hang in there, guys.
Get out there and dig something.
All right. Good night. Thanks for having me.